Israel secretly be building a $27 billion stealth bomber? Despite already having access to top U.S. fighter jets and billions in American military aid, rumors suggest Israel may be developing its own advanced bomber. With strengths in missile defense and cybersecurity, Israel's tech often rivals the Pentagon's. If true, this could surpass even the US B-21 Raider and reshape airpower dynamics. Some reports say the project has raised concerns in Russia, China, and Iran. But is it real or just speculation? Could this be Israel's move toward total aerial dominance? Join us as we dig into the truth behind the rumored billion-dollar Israeli stealth bomber. In June, the world held its breath as Israel and Iran clashed in what became known as the 12-Day War. Explosions and airstrikes shook the Middle East, but the real twist came when the United States joined the battle with serious firepower. For the first time in history, the U.S. military fought alongside Israel in a full-scale war. This moment came when America sent in its most secretive and deadly bomber, the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. This futuristic-looking plane flew deep into Iranian airspace, dropping massive 30,000-pound bombs called bunker busters on Iran's underground nuclear sites. These bombs were so powerful they could rip through solid rock and steel to destroy hidden targets buried deep underground. Israel, though a strong military force, simply didn't have the tools to do this on its own. It has advanced fighter jets like the F-35, but those planes are too small to carry such heavy bombs. It also has no heavy bombers, nothing that can fly far, undetected, and carry that kind of weapon. That's why America had to step in, and now lawmakers in Washington are asking, should Israel be given this power next time? Two U.S. lawmakers, Democrat Josh Gottheimer from New Jersey and Republican Mike Lawler from New York, think the answer is yes. They recently introduced a new bill called the Bunker Buster Act. If passed, this law would let President Donald Trump give Israel the Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MOP bomb, along with the aircraft needed to use it. Why is this such a big deal? Because these bombs don't work with just any plane. Only one aircraft in the world is currently certified to carry them, the U.S. Air Force's B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. No other plane in the U.S. or Israeli fleet can do what it does. That's what makes this proposal so bold and so controversial. Some military experts have even joked about Israel possibly trying to drop these giant bombs out of the back of their transport planes, like the C-130 Hercules. But that's not realistic. They need a specially designed aircraft to carry and launch a 15-ton bomb with precision. Without one, the bomb is just dead weight. The bill's supporters argue that giving Israel this technology wouldn't just help Israel, it would help the United States too. Iran's nuclear program has long been a threat not just to Israel, but to global security. By arming Israel with bunker busters and the planes to use them, the U.S. could avoid needing to send its own forces into future conflicts. Israel would have the tools to take care of threats on its own. Still, this raises big questions. Should America hand over one of its most advanced military secrets? Would doing so start a new arms race in the region? And if Israel had this power, would it use it without warning? The 12-Day War may be over for now, but it has already changed the way the world sees military partnerships and nuclear threats. The future may depend not just on diplomacy, but on who holds the biggest bomb in the quietest plane. The recently introduced Bunker Buster Act isn't the first time the idea of giving Israel long-range bombing power has come up, and it probably won't be the last. Representative Josh Gottheimer has already pushed similar proposals twice in the last 3 years, hoping to equip Israel with the tools it needs to strike faraway underground targets, especially those hidden deep inside Iran. So far, none of those proposals have made it through Congress. This growing push for strategic bombers is not just a modern idea. In fact, back in June 2014, former Israeli Ambassador Michael Oren, who represented Israel in Washington from 2009 to 2014, 2013, shared a revealing story in a powerful editorial. He said he had personally asked American officials to sell Israel at least one B-52 Stratofortress, a massive, long-range bomber that has been flying since the Cold War. Oren knew better than to ask for the sleek, stealthy B-2 Spirit or the high-speed B-1 Lancer. Those aircraft were far too advanced and closely guarded. The B-52, on the other hand, was old but reliable. big enough to carry massive bombs like the Massive Ordnance Penetrator and strong enough to send a serious message to Iran. In his editorial, Oren recalled asking for the B-52 not once, but 3 times, twice in 2013 and again in 2018. Each time, the answer was no. Even though the B-52 is one of the oldest bombers still in use, the United States has never sold or exported any of its strategic bombers to another country. Letting one leave American hands, even to a close ally like Israel, would be a major shift in policy. Giving Israel just one B-52 would show Iran that the U.S. was serious about stopping it from developing nuclear weapons. It wasn't just about Israel's defense, it was about sending a warning that Washington stood firmly behind its ally. This idea of giving Israel a strategic bomber wasn't limited to Oren. Back in April 2014, the Wall Street Journal ran an editorial suggesting that America should go even further, giving Israel a dozen B-52s along with bunker-busting bombs. But not everyone agreed. A few weeks later, Robert Farley, a professor at the U.S. Army War College, dismissed the idea completely. He called it a silly little proposal with about zero chance of becoming reality. Still, the fact that these ideas keep coming up shows how important this issue has become. Israel wants the ability to deal with threats on its own, and U.S. lawmakers are trying to find ways to make that happen, without putting American forces at risk. Critics of the idea of supplying Israel with B-52 bombers have pointed out that while iconic, these aircraft are slow, lack stealth capabilities, and would be dangerously exposed to modern air defenses, even those belonging to Iran's aging air force. Their vulnerability in a high-threat environment like Iran's makes them less than ideal for missions deep inside hostile territory. However, during the recent 12-day war, Israel's series of intense airstrikes significantly weakened Iran's air defense systems. So much so, in fact, that by the time the United States launched Operation Midnight Hammer on June 22nd, the skies over southern Iran were already partially cleared by the Israeli Air Force. In the 48 hours leading up to the U.S. strike, Israeli jets targeted and disabled multiple Iranian air defense positions, opening a path for the American B-2 Spirit bombers to enter undetected and carry out precision strikes on nuclear facilities. Still, using B-52s for that mission would have been far riskier than deploying the stealthy B-2s. Had Israel possessed 2 of its own, many analysts believe it could have conducted an operation like Midnight Hammer independently, without relying on U.S. intervention. And considering how degraded Iran's defenses were by that point, even the B-52s might have managed the mission if Israel had no better option. After all, throughout the conflict, Israeli F-15 and F-16 fighter jets operated deep in Iranian airspace without suffering a single combat loss, a testament to the precision and dominance of Israel's 4th-generation Air Force. Beyond the technical and operational considerations, there is a political angle as well. Providing Israel with B-2s and the Massive Ordnance Penetrator bombs could be framed in Washington as a strategic move to prevent future U.S. military entanglement. Former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren, argued this point just days before Operation Midnight Hammer. In an editorial, he wrote that had the United States approved his earlier request to supply Israel with B-52s, Israel would not now be waiting to see if America would step in on its behalf. He also emphasized that giving Israel the tools to act alone would quiet critics on both sides of the American political spectrum who worry that Israel is pulling the United States into another prolonged Middle Eastern conflict. It's worth noting that Midnight Hammer marked the first time the United States entered a war in direct military support of Israel. Until then, U.S. involvement had been more indirect, providing Israel with equipment, intelligence, and resupply rather than direct combat support. A historic example of this approach is Operation Nickel Grass, during the October 1973 Arab-Israeli War, when President Richard Nixon ordered a large-scale airlift of weapons, fighters, and tanks to resupply Israel mid-war. Likewise, during the Gulf War in 1991, after successfully persuading Israel not to retaliate against Iraqi Scud missile attacks, the U.S. rewarded Israel with surplus F-15s, F-16s, as well as Apache and Black Hawk helicopters. If the proposed Bunker Buster Act becomes law, still a significant if, and Washington supplies Israel with B-2 bombers and MOPS, it could signal a return to that earlier model of support, equipping Israel to act independently. In that case, while the recent U.S. involvement in the Israel-Iran war may have been unprecedented, it might also remain a one-time event, not the beginning of a new pattern. Thanks to generous U.S. aid packages, Israel can buy almost any American-made weapon it wants, and usually on favorable terms. But despite this special access, there are still limits. Not everything that's available is affordable, and Israel still has to make smart choices about how it spends its military budget. Just because the weapons are there doesn't mean Israel can simply have them all. Military planning takes strategy, not just shopping lists. Even with America's support, Israel has to think carefully about its long-term needs, threats, and finances. This has created a gap between what Israel can buy and what it should or wants to buy. One example of this challenge is the Littoral Combat Ship, or LCS, a high-speed modern warship designed by the United States Navy for missions near the coast. For years, Israel's Navy has looked at expanding beyond its usual fleet of small corvettes. These ships have worked well for coastal defense, but changing times have brought new needs. Israel now has to deal with more complex maritime tasks. These include maintaining the naval blockade of Gaza and protecting the natural gas fields discovered off its coast. These offshore energy sites are vital for the country's economy and energy independence, and they need strong protection. Over the last 10 years, Israel seriously explored the idea of getting a specially adapted version of the American LCS. The plan was to make major changes to the original U.S. design to better fit Israeli needs. These changes would make the ships less modular, meaning less focused on plug-and-play mission equipment and more self-sufficient, giving them better endurance and survivability. On paper, it seemed like a perfect match. A fast, high-tech ship with powerful sensors and weapons would fit right into Israel's defense strategy. It would also allow Israel to better patrol its waters and protect its offshore interests. But then came the problem: cost. The custom changes Israel wanted made the ship far more expensive than expected. The price tag grew too high for the Israeli Navy to justify, even with U.S. assistance. The dream of adding a version of the Littoral Combat Ship to its fleet was put on hold. Still, this doesn't mean it will never happen. As global shipbuilding prices shift, or as Israel's strategic needs evolve, the equation might change. If threats at sea increase, or if new financial options open up, the IDF may return to the idea of a larger, more advanced warship. When it comes to American fighter jets, Israel has access to some of the best. But there's one jet that's off limits, no matter how close the U.S.-Israel relationship is: the F-22 Raptor. This advanced stealth fighter is considered the most powerful air superiority aircraft in the world. But an American law called the Obey Amendment prevents it from being sold to any other country. The law was created with Israel specifically in mind. Back when the amendment was written, U.S. officials were concerned that Israel might pass along sensitive technology to countries like Russia or China, whether on purpose or by accident. To avoid making Israel the only country banned from buying the jet, the U.S. applied the ban globally. That's why only the United States Air Force flies the F-22 today. Even so, Israel has a history of taking air superiority jets and turning them into powerful multi-role machines. For example, the F-15 was originally designed to rule the skies in air-to-air combat. But once Israel bought it, the country modified it to carry out devastating bombing missions. It's possible the same could have been done with the F-22. Though it's not known for strike missions, the Israeli Air Force could have adapted it to meet their unique needs, if they had the chance to buy it. Another major challenge for Israel is long-distance airstrikes, especially against faraway targets like Iran. While Israel's F-15s and F-16s can reach those targets with aerial refueling, it's not easy. The distance is great, and Iran's air defenses are tough. That's why some defense experts believe Israel would benefit from having a long-range strike bomber. One of the most talked about American bombers in this category is the B-21 Raider, the U.S. Air Force's new stealth bomber built for long-distance missions. It's designed to fly far, stay hidden, and carry heavy weapons, even potentially nuclear ones. In theory, this bomber could give Israel the reach and firepower it needs to hit hardened or deeply buried targets in Iran. But there's a catch, actually several. First, Israel has not operated a strategic bomber since the 1950s, when it retired its last B-17 Flying Fortresses. Second, The B-21 will likely be protected by strict export laws, especially because it might be used to deliver nuclear weapons. That makes any deal to send one abroad highly unlikely. And while there's been talk, some of it more fantasy than fact, about Israel acquiring American B-52s, those old bombers are still considered strategic assets. Selling even one would be a major policy change for the U.S. Still, Israel's ongoing concerns about Iran have kept the conversation alive. If threats grow and the need becomes urgent, pressure could build for the U.S. to offer new options. Until then, Israel will likely continue relying on its upgraded fighter jets and wait for the day when it might gain access to the heavy hitters of American airpower. Now, what's the use of powerful warplanes if they don't carry strong bombs? That's where the massive ordnance penetrator comes in, one of the largest bombs ever designed. Israel's interest in the MOP stems from its potential use against fortified underground sites in Iran or elsewhere. However, the United States has not agreed to send the bomb to Israel. One major reason is that the Israeli military does not currently have an aircraft that can deliver the bomb effectively. Without a proper delivery system, the weapon would be unusable. Another reason involves politics. During President Barack Obama's time in office, the White House was concerned that giving Israel such powerful tools might cause problems in the region. If Israel gained the ability to launch a surprise strike on Iran, it could lead to a larger conflict and shift the power balance in the Middle East. Still, things can change. A different political climate or new threats in the region might one day lead the U.S. to rethink its position. If Israel manages to develop or acquire a plane that can carry such a large weapon, and if political tensions grow, the MOP could become a major talking point again. But Israel isn't only focused on air attacks. Another powerful part of its defense strategy is happening below the waves with submarines. Israel's submarine force is small but important. These underwater vessels give Israel a quiet, hard-to-detect way to respond to attacks. So far, Israel has used Dolphin-class submarines, diesel-electric boats that were transferred from Germany. These subs are very capable and have helped Israel patrol its waters and protect its interests. Still, they have limits. Diesel-electric submarines don't have the same strength, speed, or endurance as nuclear submarines like those used by the United States. Nuclear-powered subs can stay underwater much longer and travel farther without surfacing. That makes them ideal for long-range missions or hidden operations deep in enemy territory. It's unlikely that Israel will ever build or receive submarines as large or as powerful as the Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines operated by the U.S. Navy. But Israel doesn't need something that big. A more modest type of sub, equipped with a small number of medium-range missiles, could still offer great value. This kind of submarine would give Israel a solid second strike ability, a way to strike back if it is attacked first, especially in the case of a nuclear strike. Military experts say that a fleet of just 4 such submarines could provide Israel with a nearly invulnerable deterrent force. If even one submarine survives an enemy's first strike, it could fire back, making enemies think twice before attacking in the first place. That's the power of a hidden, mobile defense system that lurks beneath the sea. So between bunker-busting bombs like the MOP and stealthy submarines hiding under the ocean, Israel is trying to build a defense that can respond from both the sky and the sea. While not all of these plans have come to life yet, the ideas behind them are shaping the way Israel prepares for the future. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.